Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Expecting Kelly here shortly. So just want to welcome you to today's show. It's all about live stream strategy. And today's word of the day is relevance. So chat's open. Love to hear what you have to say. And very interested in seeing how we can create some powerful takeaways. So, what does relevance mean to me? Well, relevance is really based on efficiency, qualifying properly, doing the work up front so that, you don't have to spend as much time after. And also, the key to relevance is meaning and importance. So, when you have value to what you provide, has meaning and importance, it will become more relevant to you. But because of the medium, it becomes more important to everybody in your audience, which hopefully builds towards a community. So happy to have a comment while we're waiting for Kelly, and excited to hear what you have to say regarding relevance in your situation, and how does that apply to your strategy on LinkedIn. And I think that's a great way to expand relevance, is starting with your intent and then taking it one step further into really communicating it. That will get the ball flowing. So, Carl's here. Great to see you, Carl. Thank you for coming today. Uh, Happy to hear what you have to say about relevance. And really excited to see how you can make what you do more cost and time efficient in order to, um, really get the most out of your time, effort, and your direction on LinkedIn. So, Carl, what's your initial thoughts uh, on relevance? I'm just writing Carl something. Uh, so uh, basically, uh, Carl's in a snow area just like me. Uh, Here's what Carl has to say. The common myth is that simply standing on a soapbox and talking is all that is necessary to gain attention, support, and building community. The common myth, okay, standing and talking is all that is necessary. Gotcha. And I think that's so true because so many people are thinking about doing something and they don't think they're prepared or they're ready. And based on that, they really postpone what could be the initial actions to building something. And they waste all that time thinking when they could have been doing, learning, and rethinking. So, there's a strategy to a strategy, and there's a process to everything. And, I think one has to examine again, what are your intentions? Uh, what's your purpose? And then how do you go from intention to purpose to resolution or success by continually being more relevant, being more integrated in what you do and how you do it. So, I don't know how much thought people put into, their strategy. I think a lot of people just go out and do things and basically, see how it goes, and also are focused on letting the next action direct the next action as opposed to being a building block on that. Uh, Carl says on relevance, every person has different issues that they care about, like rings on a tree. Those closest to the core have the greatest significance and guide their actions. People who try to be everything to everyone are not addressing these core motivations. And actually, because you're the prominent commenter, I sent you a link to the show today, Carl, if you want to jump on. So feel free, it should be in your LinkedIn messages. Here we got Dennis, who's another snow survivor here in Colorado. I am shovel ready, did my walks, and now here to hear your talks. Well, thank you. If you did your walks, you're quite the guy, because looking out my window, and we can lift this up to see, you can't see. It's all snow and more snow. So, but it is March. Somehow Colorado always needs all the moisture it can get. So congrats to you, Dennis, and always happy to see you. And really encouraged by the progress so many people are making by strategizing together, collaborating together. I was reading the 7 Effective Whatever by Stephen. Okay, here we got Carl. Hi, Carl.
Hang on.
You're the man of the day. Just waiting for the picture. But in the meantime, we've got a great comment here. Good morning. Looks like Omar. What I think relevant means to me is how people will be able to be educated with my programs. Also, which people will be relevant from my connection to what I do. That's a great
yeah,
insight.
I'm working on my camera. For whatever reason, it's been a problem this morning.
Okay, not a problem. You could even use your voice until you get your camera, or you can sign back on, whatever works best.
Yeah, I'm going to try that.
Okay, see you in a bit. Thank you, Carl. Dennis comes back with great to be together, regardless of the weather. That's so true, Dennis, because as much as everybody would like to think they're independent, and that's what I was going to say with the Stephen Covey book, 7 practices of effective people. He said, you go from dependent and sometimes you go to independent. Okay, here we go. Carl, I think you did that on purpose just to make a better presentation the second time you signed on. I might have to use that. So unexpectedly, we've got Carl Dakin, who is the star of his own show on Tuesdays mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern, preceding this show. It's Instant Riches. Is that the name of the show? Carl? I can't hear you.
I've got to turn this off. Okay.
Well, take a lesson from what we're doing, because this is what you got to do if you got to do live streaming. So you might think this is odd, but no, this is more typical. And it's great because it challenges you. It's like making you do a couple of pre-exercises just to get into the game. So, Carl.
Yeah. Good morning, Don. Thanks for inviting me to be on the show. I am totally unscripted, unprepared, and quite obviously I didn't shave this morning, and it's because it's a snow day, and I'm not going anywhere because we have probably 20 inches of snow at my house already, and it's snowing very hard. So nonetheless, happy to be here, and happy to talk about relevance. I was actually in a conversation this morning with my wife, who runs a charity. She's the executive director. And we were trying to explain raising funding as opposed to just standing up and waving our arms, and it's all about relationships. It's everything that Don, you and I have talked about, and you talk about on your show all the time, is that just because somebody sees you doesn't mean that they're going to give you money. And it's a point I made in my instant funding newsletter on Sunday. I kind of rewrote the top 10 issues for small businesses raising funding. And I used to say that small businesses are competing with all other small businesses for funding. And I realized that was incorrect. Small businesses are competing with everyone for funding. Every individual, every charity, every business, every government, everybody's competing for money. And if what you're talking about is not relevant, you're not getting any funding. And in fact, if it's not most relevant, then you're not going to get any funding. And this is something that people who do not raise money do not understand. They get this idea that all they have to do is express the fact they're looking for funding, and funding will come. And it doesn't work that way. You have to have a community, you have to have relationships which represent that community. And your community has to not just be people who know you exist, they have to be people who care about why you exist and what you're doing. So that's a quick summary of what I've been talking about for the last hour. So.
Well, that's very important. And I say that because not only is it important, it's also relevant because too many people's mindset has always been, because it has always been kind of local, right? I mean, 40, 50 years ago, if you wanted to raise money and you were in Colorado, you kind of focused on Denver and the community there, and you competed for people's money because people would invest in their locale when possible because it saved time, travel, and being able to be accessible. And then things start to get more national, right?
Well, and what happened was COVID. I mean, quite frankly, using Zoom, I probably used it, once a month, before COVID, and now I use it 2 or 3 times a day, or some other video conferencing. We didn't have a chance to get together, which was the fundamental way, the old school way of forming a relationship was go meet somebody, go meet them again, develop a relationship over time. And now social media is the dominant form of communication, and it's different. And it's harder, in my mind, to get that sense of authenticity, of trust that you need if you're going to ask somebody to support you. How do you do that? So I'm still in what I consider a learning curve, or adopting, pivoting to the new normal, whatever the hell that is. Here I am, on your show this morning. And thank you, Don, again, for letting me be on your show at the last minute.
Well, I find that once you get consistency and frequency, then you get more of your message heard in the way you want it to be heard, makes it more relevant to both parties. But what you've touched on is a distinguishing feature of those in your industry, or pretty much any other industry, is how do you distinguish and differentiate yourself early? And because of your industry being so regulated, you don't have as much imagination or creativity in how you promote it, right? If you said, I'll give you 1,000 times your money in 3 days, that would be great. But I'm saying, as far as if it was true, you would have no question of demand and the ability to service it. But because it isn't, and you want, especially in your industry, not only do you want a total line, you want to be of higher integrity and trust. So then the question turns to where you can be creative is your vision of the marketplace, your vision of the supply of money and how people get it through social media, right? Because if everything's standardized to a point, then it's all about packaging, presentation, projection.
Well, but even then, it's still a generic commodity. If you go at Christmas time and there's 1,000 gifts under the tree, all packaged with ribbons, and they all look nice, you can't tell the difference because they all look the same. And this is how investors, when you go talk to them about, you say, hey, I can make you money by investing in me. And they're going, that's what everybody else says. So why would I pick you out of the tens of millions actually, now that everyone's competing. Out of the 8 billion people on the planet, from your spouse to your kids to your neighbors to everybody else who's looking for money, all the charities, the government wants money. They're going to take taxes. They get to mandate giving you taxes. I'm working on taxes today again. All these people want your money. So why would you give to one person over another? This is relevance to its core, is that people have things they care about. And this morning, my wife's charity helps kids with cancer. They put on a camp where kids can be kids again. That's the quote, because they get this mindset that they're a victim, that they're different for all the wrong reasons, and their mind just starts collapsing on itself. It's a bad recipe. And so they take them to a camp, they surround them with people, go, hey, you're a kid, you're okay. Yeah, I know you had cancer. Don't worry about that. That's not really important here. You're a kid. And it works with the head, creates the mindset or resets the mindset that you're a kid, be a kid, enjoy being a kid, quit being a victim. And that's okay. And by doing that, that's a great thing. I mean, to see some of the transformation these kids go through, and it's Camp Wappy Yappy. If anybody would like to look it up, that's WAPIWAYAPY. I can't even do it. And it's a Sioux word for health and healing, which is really great, but from a spelling standpoint, it's a struggle. And pronunciation for somebody out of Kansas, it's even worse. So, but we were talking about the fact that even though we're doing something that would seem to be at the pinnacle of what people might care about, kids with cancer, there's still even a difference between kids getting therapy or help and research to stop cancer from ever occurring again. So basically, to take cancer out of the picture altogether. And in working with different people who are trying to pick and choose what they care about most, the majority of the money is going to research, which makes total sense. Let's get rid of cancer. Let's get it out of our lives, and then to help those who were the unfortunate, victims of cancer is still secondary to the research, and you're competing against the research dollars. And that's if you care about cancer instead of any of the other 100 diseases that children may encounter. And so depending upon which family you talk to, is cancer top of their list, or is it number 9 or 10 on the list because they're worried about some other ailment that their kid may have incurred? So relevance is everything when you're saying, I want to build a community, I want to go out and do something with people because they want to share your interests. That's what relevance gets down to. And a lot of things we do, as much as we think well about ourselves, are irrelevant to almost everybody. So
I mean, I think that's terrific. And, hats off to your wife for participating in such a quality, supportive program. And to your relevance point, you have to be relevant to begin with, right? And that's where you start. If you don't have any value, if you can't be relevant, and now you're just trying to do a dog and pony show or project this super ability to do what you say you do, you're just extending the time between exposure, right?
well,
It's like,
you're wasting resources. So nobody has all the time in the world to do a dog and pony show 24/7, 365. It doesn't exist. So when you say I have so much time in the world, I want to talk to those people to who I am relevant because I am going to get hopefully a positive response from them. Anyone who I'm not relevant, they may listen, they may give me an attaboy, but they're not going to do anything to help me. And therefore, I have to pick and choose how I use my time to be more relevant. That's part of the reason I'm working on my own LinkedIn live show with you, Don, is because I'm trying to find people who are relevant to me and I'm relevant to them. I want this mutual reciprocity of relevance, because then with what limited time I have, I can get more done. It's just an efficiency question.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. And, Malcolm Gladwell in his books, he said, I think it was 1,000 hours of practice before you, or maybe 10,000 hours of practice before you can qualify yourself as an expert. And let's just say it's 1,000 hours. Well, you're never going to be as bad as your first hour or as good as your last hour. And the idea is not just to count down hours, but to learn from every hour that moves into the next hour differently than you started the first hour, because hopefully you're smarter, had more time to review, reflect, add a piece, take a piece away. You're always priming and trimming and cleaning whatever you're doing to keep it relevant, to keep it active. And I think the key thing is that's are you relevant? The last thing is how relevant are you to your audience or your client base? And where I see that is taking the mentality of your client base and saying, what do they want to hear from me? You know what they want to hear? I can get you more demand than anybody else. I can get you the best demand, and I can give you options you wouldn't have, right? If you just said those three things, and then the question would be, how do you do it? Right? I mean,
Right.
I'm sold on the first three. There's no question.
Well, that's the outcome I want. Yeah, that's what I want to see happen. But there's a difference between stating a vision or a hopeful outcome and how you get from where you're at to that point. And this is where a lot of the different things out there just completely fall apart or don't work. I get, half a dozen emails a day now, or messages saying, "Hey, I can boost your sales by 200% by 5 o'clock tonight." And I'm going, this is one of Kelle's legitimate complaints, that they have no idea who I am, what I do, who my market is, or what I'm doing. So how can they make it a generic statement that they're going to help me that much? It's just I'm trying to remove the words from my vocabulary. It's a pitch without substance. So.
Well, to follow that, if you were to state those three things or whatever things there were, like I say, the natural question is, well, how do you do it? That's great. I mean, if you really can do it, how do you do it? And if you said, well, I've got a broadcast platform that has developed a community of really sharp, like-minded, relevant, aligned individuals. And when I bring things up, they mean more because of the community I'm in and the ability for them to support that. And it's not that you're going to get funding from the community, but you'll get amplified reach and support from the community. So if we can get the message out 100 times larger, 100 times faster, then everybody who's doing the let's meet at Starbucks, let's have a Zoom call, well, that's slow. That's so many more steps to build trust and confidence. And that would be, and not only that, if you like, I can feature you on a couple shows. You can tell your own story yourself, right? So now you're sharing the responsibility. Now you're sharing the opportunity, because so many people are getting tired of waiting on somebody. I mean, how many clients call you? What's going on? How come things aren't happening? Where's the money? And if you could say, hey, come on, tell your story, see for yourself, I'll introduce you. And I think that's what you are, is a connector. Let me connect the money to the people who want it in the most time, cost efficient, happy way. And, more choices can bring more value to everybody. So if someone says, because I got more choices, I got 20% more than I thought I'd raise. And then somebody else would say, I might have paid 20%, but I know this is going to be a winner. And I'll pay a premium to get in, knowing there's 10 other people with the same check that I have to give. And then the person in the middle gets a feather in their hat because you put them together and it worked. And now all of a sudden, the next person, it's not just here's how I do it, here's how I do it and what it did, right? And if you can keep replicating that, then going out there with confidence is no problem, because hey, case history, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it happened in the last 3 months, you're not competing with anybody at that point, because now you've taken 8 billion down to one plus whoever does what you do and makes yourself significant. What do you think, Carl?
Well, and this was part of our conversation this morning. My wife's charity has very many options on how they can go out and basically engage in development, which is uh, nonprofit speak for raising funding. And because they have all these options, there's a cost to anything they do, from going out and paying for Google AdWords, as a form of social media or SEO work, is one of the options on the table. Or they can put on their annual gala where they invite everybody into a room, they put on entertainment, it's a nice dinner, and so forth. And there's all these others, just dozens and dozens of options. But in raising money, it's based on relationships. And your ability to build a relationship, you have to look at each modality as a form of investment. It's like saying, well, I put money into a CD, I'm going to get so much money back. I put money into a high flying growth stock, I might make more money, but there's risk associated with it. And so you have to list out all of the ways that you can build your community and ask yourself, time, effort, cost that I'm going to invest into doing that versus what I get back from that. And right now, I'm putting LinkedIn Live way up here as my best investment of what I can do to build my community. I'm putting out a daily newsletter. I'm actually putting a lot more time into it. I'm going to ultimately, I think it contributes to everything I'm doing, but I'm not sure I'm going to get the same ratio in terms of return on my time and investment in my newsletter that I'm getting from doing these LinkedIn Live shows. So it's an interesting thing. I also speak and I appear here and there. I write. I'm working on 2 books, all these things. But what am I getting out of each of those? And what worked 2 years ago is not today's marketplace. We have to constantly pivot, adjust to what's going on today. And this new capability, new to me, not to you, on using LinkedIn Live seems to me to be superior to everything else I could do, including a lot of other things I've tried, like podcasting and trying to speak at different forums or conferences and things like that. Anyway, it's still, I'm still learning. And as you put it, as much as I've learned over my 40 plus years of doing whatever it is I'm doing, my marketplace didn't sit still from yesterday to today. I was laughing at the stock market, which I think is divorced from reality, where everybody's going, hey, you need to invest in NVIDIA. It's the hottest new artificial intelligence stock on the market. And then all the people who were pumping it dumped it, and the stock just collapsed, as a consequence, because the price point in the stock market has nothing to do with the underlying value. And you can get caught up in people telling you how great stuff is, but it's usually in their benefit, not yours. And it's short term, not long term. And I see community investment in relationships, building these relationships as my most valuable asset. It's a long-term investment. I'm going to continue to invest for a long time. And right now, I think LinkedIn live streaming, like we're doing, is my best investment in my portfolio of how I'm investing my time in building my community.
Yeah, I'm there with you because I'm doing it every day. Been doing it every day for a couple of years almost. And, just to break it down, and anybody can do this with whatever industry they're in. But let's take Carl's industry. People are going to always need funding, and funding's always going to be available. So those are given. If you have taken the time that LinkedIn and live streaming offer the best approach to time and cost efficiency and delivering relevant messages to aligned audiences in the best possible way. So you know that. So the only thing left is you, right, as part of that formula, and how you message. And if you, relevant, you got a relevant audience, you got a relevant delivery tool, you got a relevant industry. So they're only going to get bigger and better because the pie is so much bigger, right? People can see I'm competing with Europe. Well, Europe's competing with you now too, right? So if you're always looking up and saying, hey, how do I catch up? How do I be like the big dogs? And you just separate from them because, something significant has shifted, right? When it went from physical to virtual, that was a huge shift. The people, like I always say, it's like musical chairs with faster music and less chairs. You just got to do more to stay the same. But if you do a lot more, you can elevate to a level that you could have never imagined. And that's why, Carl's point of stocks being worth $2 trillion, I think NVIDIA just passed Amazon last week, but that's the thing. It's a roller coaster. And what you want is stability, especially if you're consistent, if you're in there for the long haul. If you're investing today for tomorrow, knowing you're foregoing some of today because of that, but some of today isn't going to get you tomorrow. And I think that's the key is if you just decide, keep it simple, keep it direct, understand where you're playing, who you're playing with, understand what they're thinking and what it would be. Because, the nice thing about not doing well is you're overwhelmed with rejection most of the time, right? And through that rejection, it starts to really impact you. Right? If you thought you're going to make a sale and everything was in place, and then all of a sudden you get surprised by, well, we thought about it, we're going to delay this decision, it makes you dig inside and say, what did I miss here that would make me think the way I thought going into here? And how do you deal with rejection with the person who rejected you? And the best thing you could do is ask why in a nice way without trying to say, I want to open the conversation again, or I'll throw another 10 points in if that'll make the difference, because then you're begging and and nobody wants to make a decision to undecide based on a small incremental, whatever it is. And usually I'll tell you the truth, it's about you. Right? It's
Well,
something.
technically it's about the other person. This is something that I constantly am battling with some of my projects and clients. Is they'll start a pitch with "I need money," which is all about themselves, and that's not what this conversation is about. Conversation is about what you can do for the other person, and if you can benefit and give value to the other person in a large enough amount, obviously they're going to want to work with you. And if you can't, you can't. And you talked about this yesterday on your show, that you'll get turned down because when you start a conversation, when you try to open up this dialogue with someone, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You may have prepared, you may have done all your due diligence, you may have done all that, but they may have something they care about more than you. And so they're going to turn you down. The purpose of the conversation after you get turned down is to ask yourself, could I have done something more? Could I have created more value? Could I have been better in explaining or communicating that value to the person across the table? And I try to start my pitches where it's not a take it or leave it. It's, I have an idea on how I can help you. I'd like your feedback on how I can help you more. And if I can help you enough, I would like for you to help me in return. And that's a very legitimate platform for starting a conversation because I'm talking about the person I'm talking to and they understand I'm sincerely trying to figure out how to give them value because I'm convinced if I give them enough value, I'm going to get something back. If I can't, then wrong place, wrong time, square peg, round hole. Of course, I'm an entrepreneur, so that I have this distorted view of that where they say, is the glass half full, half empty? And I say, I just have the wrong size glass. I need to go back and get a different glass. And on the square peg, round hole thing, I go, well, I can always get a square peg in a round hole. I just have to whittle it down so I can jam it into the hole
Well,
and move forward.
that's why I love having you on because, I'm of a business background and have done business for 40 some years and have in different eras and different technologies, but people have always stayed the same. In 40 years, man and women haven't evolved tremendously in any of their capabilities. It's just what they've been exposed to. And I know it might sound like sour grapes, but when someone says no, that you truly believe should have said yes for the right reasons that you provided, your judgment of them changes, right? Because if you did everything the best you could and you believed it was really good, there would be a contradiction somewhere.
Right.
Right?
And I typically at that point, Don, I assume there's something I don't know, that my projection or expectation was based upon something I thought was true, which was not. And it may have nothing to do with me. It typically has everything to do with the other person. I didn't know. I didn't know that they were just diagnosed as being overweight and they're thinking about their doctor in their head, or they're tired this morning and they really need a vacation, or something else is in the mix that has put me down on their priority list, no matter how much value I bring to the table. And that may mean that I simply just come back next week, or I laugh. I've made pitches to people in both the morning and the afternoon the same day and gotten two different, feedbacks. It's just, there's that much volatility in the decision making, and that's part of the deal. But I feel if I bring value, if I'm prepared, I'm ready to talk about the other person, I'm going to have a good conversation. I'm going to learn from that conversation. I'm going to improve what I'm doing or what I understand they need. I still may get turned down. It's that is part of asking, is that you're going to get turned down.
Well, yeah, but here's to take it to another level. Everybody is and should be focused on integrity, especially when it's a trust issue and a trust relationship. And as the person going out and sharing and promoting and communicating, you check all the boxes, say everything I'm saying I remember and I'm going to do or even over deliver on. So I'm cool. But during that whole process, you're receiving information, right? I'm this, I make this, I do this, and you form a picture. Well, this person's highly successful. They're generating a lot of income. They invest a lot of money. But then when it comes to the rejection, well, I don't really have the funds right now, or, whatever the case. And it's like, well, you just said 2 weeks ago you did. Right. And all of a sudden I was basing it on everything you told me, just like you were basing everything on everything I told you. But when it came to the reason why, it was something that was never brought up ever before. It was actually something that was overlaid with a happy picture. And if you take it one step further, let's say you work together and you decide, let's go forward. And you start doing due diligence and everything looks awful. It's not what you intended. It's not what you were told it was. And that becomes not only a red flag, but a chance for you to say, hey, when all things were equal, I was cool. When things were a little off, I was willing to compensate just to make it happen. But when things are totally distorted, because what you're doing is representing somebody who's not representing themselves well, and you're going to connect them with people that trust you, right? That becomes a negative situation in what you're promoting and who you are, because it'd be like, hey, Carl was always this, and he brought me this guy or gal.
Right. No, but I get people all the time will send me like an entire funding package and go, please introduce me to people I don't know. When I haven't read their package, I don't know the person who sent me the package. And they're assuming that I will just happily throw this out into the wind of because I know all these people who have the money, which I do. But I also know that most of the time, these people don't match with what I just got, even without looking at it. I know that 95, 99% of them are not going to match up with what I'm looking at. So I can't just hand it to someone because then I'm not respecting the time of the person I'm handing it to. And my relationship with people who do have funding, whatever shape, size, or form it may be, I have to respect their time. They don't want to spend all day flipping through slide decks and offering memorandums that have no interest in and never will have an interest in. That's being disrespectful to them, and they will quit listening to me because I'm no longer a valuable pipeline of information or deal flow. So when people just throw stuff at me, the first thing I go is they don't know how to raise money, and therefore they've lost credibility in my mind. Even though I'm there to help them learn and guide them in raising funding, they've already decided who they're going to raise money from without knowing who that is. They've already crafted a deal without knowing why that person would care. And then they're asking me to become an accomplice in this mismatch of poorly used time. And I won't do that. And it's not, I have anything against them. I would help them if I could. But I also don't have all the time to flip through a bunch of documents just because somebody wants me to. I've got this guy on LinkedIn messages keeps sending me stuff. I need to raise money. I need it yesterday. No other information than that. I'm like, well, first thing is what value do you bring? Communicate that value to someone who will get a value out of what you're doing. That's as much as I can do. And yet we have we have all kinds of myths in the capital industry, particularly the entrepreneur world, that are amplified by the media, amplified by pitch competitions and other things, which are not reality. Most of the time, they're just entertainment for somebody, which doesn't mean anything to the entrepreneur. And that's why I typically don't participate in pitch competitions because I've got better things to do. It's not a good investment of my time.
Well, and the other element that, and all of this ties together with relevance, right? And sometimes you give yourself a pat on the back for being a super qualifier. And,
Yeah.
you end up turning a lot down that maybe years ago or on the surface you might have just accepted. But the ones you don't play gives you the opportunity to play harder with the ones you do. And the other aspect is how committed, how much of a worker is the person going to be? Or is it going to be like, hey, Carl, find me the money, you know my number, versus what can I do? What can I add to this? In other words, make them, and it's important for them to be part of the process because then they better appreciate and understand what the process is and what it takes.
Yeah, I came up with a little bit of a technique that I still try to implement when a small business wants to raise funding. I talk to them about they're taking a portion of the money they raise and investing it in a small business in a developing country where, $10,000 in a developing country can be everything to get a business up and off the ground. But by doing that, I've shifted them from somebody seeking money to an investor. So they have to put on their investor hat. It's not as good looking as your hat, Don, but it's an investor hat. And in that regard, they now shift their thinking. They're going, oh, what would a deal look like? Why would I put money into this deal versus that deal? And then if they self-reflect at that point, how does my deal look to everybody I'm pitching to? It gives them that empathetic, that ability to see both sides of the picture of the transaction. And that changes how they go about raising funding because they now understand more. Oh, wow, a person on the other side's not just throwing money at me. They're going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to pick and choose. So it is very important to use your time wisely, and it's like we have talked about in the past that it isn't the volume of people, it's the people who are actually doing something. And this is, we talk about talkers and doers and actors. And I would like to consider myself an action figure in that context of raising money. I want to make something happen, and trying to help people who have no comprehension of funding, who their investor is, why they're bringing value to the table. They can learn. And I did a presentation last week at Founded in FOCO, which is the startup week for Fort Collins, Colorado. And we had people in the audience who basically were starting from zero. They had no concept of what raising funding was about. So hopefully they walked out of the room a little bit more knowledgeable, a little wiser about it, but they have a long ways to go. And I can't spend all my time working with people who have zero knowledge when I could be working on projects that might raise significant funding to create significant impact. So I need to, allocate my time a little bit over here to nurture those who don't know, but more on people who are already in motion where I can get more done.
Well, when we talk about, again, relevance, and we talk about it specifically as to funding, how you approach the person you're trying to work with is how they're going to see how you're going to approach everybody that you're trying to source funding from. So if you're really thoughtful towards time, if you're always thoughtful towards thought, and which means that, again, what are the three things or two things they really need to hear for them to be interested in hearing more? See, the first line is not as important as other lines. It's its reason for being first, right? You got to open a jar before you fill it. You got to gain someone's interest and curiosity. It's not, would you like to do this? Would you like to learn how it's done? Right? And after you learn how it's done, then you can choose to decide, is this something that is of interest? And I'm here to customize. Right? So if something becomes a higher priority, something becomes a circumstance, okay, thank you very much. We're going to remold this thing until we get it to the point where we start really excited at a good point. And, all this time and thought and energy is different than someone who's just using pitches, who just sends you the thing, boom, boom, bang, bada boom, bam, boom. And a lot of times, because people don't know any better, are lazy, just assume things, they go ahead with these people. And, if you look at even an investment portfolio, let's say we talked about this in the past, Carl, let's say a company investment group invests in 10 companies. Well, they know what their averages are. They know when they hit a home run, they know when they get a hit, and they know when they strike out. Well, if you could put more time and energy into getting more of the home runs, because you had more to choose from, but you also chose properly and said that, hey, if our company can get 3 home runs when everybody's getting 1, we're going to not only perform great, but access to capital will be unlimited, right?
Yeah. Success breeds success. And was in a long conversation with an associate of mine yesterday about what's necessary to help crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding, become everything it can be. Because if we can get it to work to a level of success, more people will do it, though more people will take advantage of it, and this will provide more wealth building for non-wealthy people, as well as access to capital for small businesses. And we're several years into the investment crowdfunding experiment after the Jobs Act passed in 2012. And we still, I'd say 99% of the deals are off target. They're trying to jam angel style investing into a pocket that can barely pay for the groceries, and it doesn't match. And so there we go as well. They keep blaming all the wrong things. They're not doing a deep enough analysis. So I get to talk about that. I am going to be on a panel in April for a 2-day crowdfunding national conference. And I'm talking about customer-oriented crowdfunding because this is where it matches. There's enough nexus, there's enough common value between the customer and the business that is not going to be found between an angel investor and a business, particularly a small business with low margins. That's not a high growth business. So why we keep telling everybody to use this model when it doesn't work is part of what's wrong with the marketplace.
Well, that's why I think having a clear, a consistent voice makes a difference, because things are so dynamic. People need to get ahead of the curve, know what the latest changes are, what the innovations are, and you could talk to more people faster, in less time and space than the other way. Want to recognize Beverly, who does every Tuesday here, Women's Empowerment event, and she's also part of our collaboration Zoom group that meets every other Thursday. Beverly's been doing a show for 3-4 months. I've seen her grow, evolve. I've seen her expand. She's got her own live stream. She's got her own podcast. She's got her own practice, and she's doing well. And part of it is knowing you don't know enough on your own, or you shouldn't have to, right? So if you can join forces, if people can get better with you and because of you, and you ratchet up together, why not? Because, the other aspect of having a show is really throwing those good softballs to the people who are up at bat, right? It's like home run derby used to be, where the idea was not to strike the batter out, give him everything you could to make him hit it out of the park. So I think, one needs to work on themselves, and when they're ready to work with other people on themselves, and then work together with other people to manifest everything they can. And the fun is knowing what you're doing and knowing it works. Once you get that confidence level, then it's like someone who makes a pizza every day, right? They know exactly how it's done. They've done it enough. They don't think twice about what it is. And I think what live streaming does now is it takes it from, hey, I am proficient and really professional what I do. Do I want to invest time into doing more of it, or to help teach other people how to do more of it? And that makes it even easier, because now you're working with people who need you to work with to get to where they are. Because as a seller, you're always at somewhat at a disadvantage to the buyer, right? If you're selling sellers who are a disadvantage to the buyer, maybe you create the advantage. And then you don't always have to do anything absolute. So you pivot. You say, I'm going to put some time and energy here, because it'd be great to be working at 10 people at once on the same thing, whether it's courses, workshops, live streams, and then also have a practice that when the right deal comes, I'm very happy to take advantage of it. Or actually, if you're working with 10 people, share it. Right? Hey, I can't handle it right now. You can. Let's work something out, or let's do something. And it gives you so many more options and variety. So thank you, Beverly. Just to get back with Dennis, agree, do more for sure when you can. Another agreement, hand up, just not hand out, for sure. And agree, success brings in money, but you shouldn't have more money than sense. And you're right, because, the people I've met who think money's everything never had any money, right? And the people who have made a lot of money in time understand the money isn't going to bring them happiness, or at least more of it won't. It's the satisfaction of who you are, who you're recognized as, who you surround yourself with, because that's nourishing. That's taking you and becoming a better person, not a wealthier person. And the better person you become, the wealthier you'll probably be. So they're not at odds, but there has to be enough balance, and there has to be enough generosity. I always applaud people that leave a little bit behind just in case, right? When people say, well, how much does it take to employ you? I'd always say just a little bit less than I'm worth, right? I mean, so if it's like 10 grand, I'll take 9,800. It doesn't, so the point is you go in with a sense of humor. You go in with a sense of, hey, everything's up for discussion at any time or review, and I think people get more comfortable say, hey, if we're walking down this road and there's something we didn't understand or appreciate, let's make it right, right? Let's continue to make things right to make it happen versus someone gets angry, someone gets upset. And you know what happens then? If there's no communication, you're talking to a person that isn't there anymore, and they're talking to another person who they think isn't there. And now you're just playing house instead of really getting down to business. And I think that's a mature approach, is sharing. And then, that's just like rejection. If you say, hey, I just started to notice or appreciate this is how things are going, or hey, you missed 3 appointments, or you did this, that wasn't what we had determined was how we're going to do this. Can you share something with me to make me feel better about it? Right? Or, hey, that's the way it is. Well, okay. I'm sorry I had to figure it out on my own when someone who knew in advance. And I think that's the other thing, is nobody likes surprises, good or bad, right? If you knew something in advance and later on turns out you didn't disclose it for whatever reason, it may not kill the deal, but it sure diminishes trust. And that's where you get more lawyers, more documentation, more whatever you want, but it takes the fun out of it. And actually, you just hurt yourself, because by getting things out of the way, everybody knows people have blemishes. Everybody knows people have histories, right? But the question is, where are you right now? And because of representation, you don't want to send somebody there that just disappointed you or surprised you, because then that just is like, hey, what do you think? I know you've been through quite a bit in your career and probably haven't missed too many individuals or types. What has served you best?
Um, I have, I won't say that I have missed a whole lot of things. I tend to have an unlimited source of optimism of making things work better. I do believe in the theory of abundance, that we can create more value than what exists. But I often have to temper that with the reality and capabilities of the people around me. And I have to make sure from the very start that our relationship is open, it's authentic, it has high integrity, and it's to mutual benefit. It doesn't do any good for me to have a relationship where I get everything and the other person gets a little. And as you often state, it's better to overperform, to give more than what the other person expected. Not so much that they're surprised, but they're pleased with the outcome, because that, again, demonstrates that you serve a purpose by giving value to others. And by doing that, then you have a community, you have people who would like to associate with you, and that contributes to your happiness, to your success. And at the end of the day, to the word of the day on relevance, you can't please everybody all the time. I think that's somebody else said that before me. But you can please those people who are relevant to you, and vice versa. So that gives you a chance to make your dent in the world, to make your contribution to making the world a better place, and that's all you can do.
Well, I think on that point, we covered a lot of ground unexpectedly. It's always great to have an audience, because you always have a guest that could be a host in the audience. So that's a fallback position. And what's so cool is, because it is spontaneous, it is unrehearsed, that whoever you bring on, whenever you bring them on, they're in the same boat as the person you were going to bring on anyways. And I think that, people want to see, well, here's a new person. I think that individual was here the other day. The word of the day, integrity, I hope. And everything is everything every new day. And that's the beauty. You can change tomorrow. You can be a reinvention of the best of yourself. You can be the new relevant version. The past doesn't have to define the future. It's a foundation possibly for the future. But, hope has a lot to do with action. If you believe, if you're hopeful, and you give yourself a break, you allow yourself the time to learn. You don't know how long it's going to take, but whatever it takes, that's what it takes. And quitting never creates a lot of winners, and winners don't quit. And we can go around in more sayings if we choose to. But it is 1 hour into the show. I want to thank everybody, especially Carl, for being so responsive to the moment, and to the audience. And I hope we shared some things you can use, take with you, share with others, because that's how communities should work. So thank you again. Tomorrow, we've got Carl coming back with Nathan Hirsch. And what Carl's doing is replicating what people before Kelle, like Kelle, have done, Harvey have come, where they get into really the second chair all the time and gets elevated to more shows with more people, and that speeds the learning process. So anyways, I have so much to say. Tomorrow we're going to have to use to continue it. Take care. Thank you again.